And this is also a game that I was just more and more impressed with the more that I looked into it. And I shouldn't be too surprised by that because this one is coming from the same publisher that created Micro Dojo, which is another game that I thought packed quite a lot of punch in a very small package. And I think the same can be said about this game. Although they do share a similar publisher and a very similar theme, these two games are very different from each other and they do have different designers, but there are some small similarities on very, very low level fundamental mechanisms in the sense that players will be sharing control of the different ninja characters out on the table. And then players are also going to be wanting to time when certain trigger events happen to trigger scoring, because you're going to want to be in control of the appropriate ninja when that happens so that you're getting the most points. But the way that this game works is that players are going to be setting up the main board by drawing 4 different tiles and then putting those tiles randomly in a square, with each of those tiles being made up of a bunch of different spaces. Some of these spaces can have nothing at all, but they could also have enemy daimyo or even enemy ninja. Players are going to be placing kind of polyomino cards, and I'll come back to these in a second, but you're essentially placing these polyomino cards in order to cover up those ninja in order to gain points, or to completely surround those enemy daimyo. And I say that these are kind of polyomino because they do work very similar to polyominoes in the way that you're going to have different ninjas in different shapes, but instead of it being on a polyomino itself, it's actually going to be on a clear card. And this is actually a really, really interesting choice because it allows you to have certain layouts that are not actually possible with a single polyomino, because you can actually have a single ninja that is completely detached from the rest of the polyomino. But players are going to be taking turns placing these cards, covering up and surrounding the ninja out on the main board. But one thing to note here is that players are actually sharing control of 3 different colored ninja. There's the black ninja, the red ninja, and the white ninja. Whenever you place a card and either cover up your enemy ninja or surround a daimyo, you're only going to be scoring points for the ninja on your card that match the card that's currently in front of you. But luckily, you do have some additional control over this, because at the start of your turn, you can actually swap 2 of these cards in order to change the ninja that's in front of you, or even potentially change the ninja that is in front of your opponent, because no matter whose turn it is, if a ninja matching your color covers up an enemy ninja on that board, whether you placed it or your opponent, the player that has control over that color is going to be the one getting that point. And of course, since there's 3 different colored ninja that you can score, you're actually going to have 3 different score tracks, with each of those tracks being associated with one of those ninja. Every time a player gets a point, you're going to be pulling the point tracker towards your side of the table, which means that each of these tracks are going to behave a little bit like a tug of war, where you're trying to pull that token towards your side. Whenever a card's placed that finishes off surrounding a daimyo completely, that player that placed that card is going to be gaining a daimyo token, and then the opposing player is going to be compensated with a favor token. And I'll come back to both of these in a second here. But then each of the different colored ninja that were used to surround that daimyo are going to be scoring their associated player points on the scoreboard, moving them up and down those tracks. It doesn't matter who placed that card at this point, you're just going to be gaining points for any of the ninja that currently match the card that's in front of you. But those favor tokens can actually be spent to activate one of the 3 available special abilities that are going to be face up on the table. There's a few of these that are going to be offered in the box, but you're only going to be playing with 3 from game to game, which means that you can have quite a lot of variety from game to game, just from the different abilities that might get included. And the game continues like this until no more cards can be placed, and then players are going to be taking back all their daimyo tokens that they earned throughout the game. And then this is where the scoring gets really interesting, because players are actually going to go through a bit of a blind bidding. You're going to be assigning those daimyo tokens across the 3 different tracks, and then whatever the difference is between what you bid and your opponent, that is going to be pulling that track either towards or away from you. After this is resolved, the player that has more of those tracks pulled to them wins the game. And if this one sounds interesting to you, you can check it out in the description below, and of course, click to get notified.